Hi guys, I'm Vesna. Welcome to vesnasstv. Thanks for stopping by. For today's video, I am bringing to you my 20 best DIYs in 2020. So here we go with number 20. I will be using some wood to create a stovetop tray cover or a noodle board. For the noodle board, I bought 3 pieces of these furring strips. They were $2.47 each at Home Depot, and they are 8-foot long pieces, so super cheap. My husband cut them into 7 shorter pieces and 2 long pieces. 7 pieces were 31.5 inch, and then 2 pieces were 24 inches, and then from a different board, which you'll see later on, another 2 pieces at 24 inches. So these boards can be rough in spots, so I just took my sander, my hand sander, and I just sanded out the rough spots on both sides. I also sanded off the numbers that were at the front of the boards because I was choosing to use that side as it was a little bit smoother than the other side. When you're picking them up at Home Depot, you want to make sure that you're picking nice ones because I think they're used for building. So like for construction, so it doesn't really matter if they're smooth or not. They're not made for like home decor and DIY. So some of them are really rough looking. So just pick nice ones that are nice and straight and not too bad. So I tried to pick the nicest ones that I could, but even so, I still had to sand them down a little bit so they would look smoother, so they'd be a bit smoother. Once I sanded down both sides as well as the edges, I was deciding whether I should do stain or wax, and I decided I was going to do the Annie Sloan Dark Wax, and I'm so glad I made this decision. It turned out amazing. So I am using just a wax brush from Lowe's, I believe, and applying the wax liberally, and I am wiping it off. Not quite right away. I'm letting it sit for a little bit, but I am not letting it sit forever, otherwise it'll be this dark, and I didn't want it to be quite that dark. So, I did about 2 boards, and then I wiped it off. And you can put as much, so this really depends on you, how dark you want it. Whether if you want it really dark, so leave it on a little bit longer. You don't even have to then take off the excess wax, but make sure you don't cake on too much, otherwise it'll take forever to dry. But again, it's really up to you. The boards won't be exactly the same, which I was okay with. I wanted that weathered look because I am doing the farmhouse type of style. So when you're applying, you don't have to go up and down. You just, you do circles, just whichever way, mishmash, and that'll make it look that much better. Once I waxed and wiped them off and got the color that I wanted, I let them dry. And then I moved on to building the feet. This is just framing lumber. I had originally spray painted this with a black stainless steel from Rust-Oleum because I was using it for a different project. But we wound up not going that way, so I'm going to go ahead and apply the Annie Sloan wax to these. And this is super cheap. You can get an 8-foot piece for $1.80 at Home Depot, so really cheap. If you had to buy it, I'm lucky I had it at home, so I don't need to worry about it. And I'm using this for the feet of the piece because I have a gas stove and the knobs are a little bit higher, so I want to make sure that it's not sitting right on the knobs for a few reasons. If we put something heavy on top, so that way it doesn't crack the knobs for some reason, and also so if we put something on it, it doesn't happen to turn the knobs or something. And again, I applied the wax the same way. I put on as much as I thought, and then I wiped it off. I think I wiped it off a bit too soon, so I had to reapply to get it to be a little bit darker and to match the other piece. But even if they, like I said, even if they didn't match perfectly, I wanted them to have a little bit of a distinction between one another because I wanted that farmhouse, barn board, rustic, weathered kind of look, so I wasn't too concerned. I left that to dry and moved on to my handles. So I just have these handles that I'm going to spray paint in black. I just have a Rust-Oleum black matte paint left over from something my husband was doing. So that's the paint that I'm using. I didn't have any more of the Rust-Oleum hammered black stainless steel, so I'm just going to use this one because I really like the finish on it. So I got these handles, I actually have 4 of them. I got them from the thrift store and they were $1 for 4, which is super cheap. So they wound up being $1/4 each. So great deal. But I guess if you had to buy them, you can buy some handles for about $1 each. Not the end of the world. I placed my handles and I measured that I had the same amount on each side of space so that the handles would be in the middle and they would match both sides of the tray. Now I put a little mark with my pencil as well as an indent with the screw just to make sure that I got the right spot. You just want to be careful so that you don't have to fill in holes or anything like that. Once that was done, I moved on to gluing. Now I glued these boards using this glue right here. Unfortunately, I didn't press record, so I just put glue on each board and I put them together. Then I used these little clamps to clamp down each board, like the 2 boards together. Unfortunately, there's a pack of mixed sizes, so some of the little ones didn't do the best job, but what I did was, once they dried for about 20 minutes, I flipped, so I took the big ones and I put them where the small ones were and vice versa to get a better hold. Now I am going to be drilling this, so I'm not too worried. Because the boards weren't perfectly straight, some spots the glue wasn't holding anyway, but I figured it would be a little bit to make this part easier. So in this part, my husband is actually helping me out, and he's pre-drilling holes into each of the boards so that he can put the feet in, the little board that's going to be the feet. So I wound up actually doing the other side of the board as well. I wound up sanding it and putting some of the wax on just because I didn't want the black to show. So then he pre-drilled the holes and he screwed in onto each board. And then he added the handle part on top and screwed that in as well. Now he did that from the bottom so that you wouldn't see the screws from the top because I didn't want the screws showing. He was a great sport for helping me out. I was just afraid of maybe breaking the board or something like that if I was drilling it. So as you can see, I left the screws up a bit from the handles because I was going to be screwing everything in together. I just wanted to have that placeholder so that when he did go screw in, it would be in the spot that I wanted it to be. So here's my tray covering the stove, all completed. So this video is a part of a collaboration hosted by Leah Knapp from DIY Beauty on Purpose. If you guys haven't checked out her channel, make sure you check it out. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. She's got amazing DIYs. She's really talented, fun to watch, an amazing person. So make sure you check her out. And it is also hosted by Heidi Sambol DIY. Heidi of Heidi Sambol DIY. If you guys have not had a chance to check Heidi's channel out, you're missing out. She's got some amazing DIYs. Again, she does the farmhouse theme, Dollar Tree DIYs. She's a professional crafter. So if you haven't heard of her, haven't seen her channel, make sure you check it out. You won't regret it. There'll also be a collaboration. So there'll be a whole bunch of creators who are showcasing their 20 best DIYs of 2020. So make sure you check that out because so much inspiration, and 'tis the season to binge watch, right? So what else are we going to do? Make sure you check everyone out. It'll be an amazing collaboration. I'll have the playlist and the host linked in my description below. Check everybody out. And on to number 19. So my next DIY is a lot of fun as well. Really, you only need a few things. You need this cane. Then you need this plaid tree skirt, all from the Dollar Tree. The cane is one of those wreath metal frames. And you're going to need some ribbon for your bow and some hot glue. Again, another really easy, and some scissors obviously, but again, another really easy DIY and very inexpensive. So before I start cutting, I want to start my cane, and I want it to start with the little white fur at the bottom, or at the top of the cane, actually at the top and bottom of the cane. And then I hot glue it there in place, and then I see where I can cut. So I'm using the least amount of material possible. I will make this small tree skirt last me the entire, it'll cover the entire cane, and that was my goal. I don't like to waste anything, so this was a great way of putting it together. And I just make sure that I'm gluing it right at the edge, like kind of overlapping over a little bit so that it doesn't show if you're hanging it up, so it looks like it's wrapped all the way around, but in fact I'm not wrapping the back. Then I follow that same pattern all around the cane, where I cut what I need, then I glue what I need, and then I cut it again. So I'm not cutting before I glue a piece down because I was afraid that I would cut and not have enough. So that's why I didn't cut right away. And it worked out really, really well. So here I'm just showing you how I'm wrapping it around just a little bit so it doesn't show, like I said, when you're hanging it up, so it looks like it's wrapped all the way around. I will play some music for you guys so you can enjoy, so that you guys can watch what I'm doing without listening to me talk. So one more quick thing, where you can see where I'm joining the fabrics together, I do a straight fold, so that way the seam isn't so visible, and it's right around the curve, so it looks like it was a part of the cane in the first place, but I will also be adding a bow there, so it won't be as visible.
So I'm a little bit more generous with my fabric at the finish here because I want to make sure that I'm covering everything, and I want to make sure that the little bottom part is attached to my fabric, so that way the fur is also at the bottom of the cane. So here's what I'm talking about. I'll just overlap everything here, and it'll be actually just a little bit past the bottom of the cane, the little fur, but that is okay because I need it to be at the bottom. I wanted to have a nice little finish there. And then I wind up adding bows. Again, like I said in the other part, this will not be a bow tutorial, but I attempted to make a proper bow with this one, and I think I did a pretty good job. So here's the bow that I made. Like I said, I didn't record myself making it because it took me a really long time to make it, and I don't think anyone would have wanted to see me fumble through that. So once I get better at these bows, I will do a tutorial, but I didn't think I had any business doing one since I'm still learning. So I'm deciding whether I'm going to add which of these little red trucks I'm going to add to my bow to complete my cane wreath. And I've decided I'm going to do I'm going to add the bigger red truck that says Merry Christmas. And I'm just going to hot glue my bow to the cane, and then I will hot glue the little red truck, and that'll bring this DIY to an end. So here's the completed cane wreath. So if you've never been to my channel before, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Vesna, and this is my DIY channel. I do have another 2 channels, my cooking channel and a home channel. On the home channel, I showcase all of these DIYs, so if you ever want to see them displayed in my home, that's where you can go to. But for this channel, I do lots of budget-friendly DIYs, whether they're thrift flips, Dollar Tree DIYs, treasure treasures, all sorts of things you can find on this channel. So if that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you hit that big subscribe button, the big bell, so you can see all when I post new videos. And please leave me a comment and hit that like button. I love hearing from you guys. So if you leave me a comment, even if you just say hi, it'll be great because then I can say hi back to you. So on to number 18. I'm going to be using this splatter screen and this little red truck from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start off with muting those gold colors on that say Merry Christmas because I did want to keep the Merry Christmas on there. So I'm just going to actually just color in over them with a black Sharpie. So it'll still have a little bit of that gold kind of coming through, but it won't be so shiny and so in your face. So I'm going to do that several times because the Sharpie doesn't quite stick to the glitter on the first try. So I just do it, I think around 2 or 3 times I go over the letters. So once I do that, I go ahead and spray paint my splatter screen. Now I'm going to be using spray paint for this, and as well I'm going to be using some brown paint. It's brown chalk paint from Art Minds. It's the espresso. So I'm going to be using both. I'm going to spray paint the splatter screen gold, and then I will go over top of it, just dry brush it a little bit, and I'll show you how I do that with the brown, but just so you can see which paints I used. And while that's drying, I'll move on to the next step. So the next step is to paint over the little red truck in some of that brown from Art Minds. And I'm doing this just again to give it that kind of more rustic farmhousey look. So I'm just dry brushing brown over top of the truck. And this is when I'm going to also dry brush around the splatter screen. It's pretty much dry now. So lately when I've been dry brushing, I always like to kind of blend the paint in using a baby wipe. I just really love the way the paint looks once I do that. So I've been doing that a lot and I've been really happy with the result. So that's what I'm doing here, that you can see me kind of wiping it off. So I add, I wipe off, I add, I wipe off. And I do this until I get the color that I'm looking for, the texture or whatever I'm doing until I get like what I'm looking for. So then I go ahead and see what I'm going to put in the back of this truck. I thought I might use these Christmas trees, but then I decided that I think I'm going to just use my Christmas evergreen picks that I got from the Dollar Tree. This is why I got them, because I knew I could use them in different projects. So I wanted it to look like there was some greenery in the back of the pickup truck. So I'm just going to cut out some of these branches and use them on the back of the truck. And I'm going to just be hot gluing them onto the truck itself. So after I get the truck all done, then I go ahead and I glue it to the splatter screen. I want it to look like the truck is going up a hill. So that's how I glue it on the splatter screen. And I also add these little beads that I got from the Dollar Tree. I add them around the splatter screen so that way it just gives a little bit more detail to that splatter screen. And I wind up painting them in that espresso as well. But again, just kind of dry brushing over top of them. And that is it. So after I attached the beads, I didn't want the handle to be so obvious. I was too nervous to cut it off, and I also like the fact that it had a little hole to hang it. So I thought it would be great if I wanted to hang it on a wreath hanger. So what I did was I created a little bow. Now I am not someone who's good at making bows just yet. I will get there. Never used to make them. So I kind of just did my own thing with the bows. This isn't really a tutorial for bows, so that's why I'm not slowing it down. I just kind of made little loops from this really cute little red truck ribbon that I got at the Dollar Tree and this red ribbon, and then like I said, I made loops, and then I just attached little longer parts for it to look like it was a bow. But again, it wasn't. I mean, some of the creators that you can watch, they make fabulous bows and they have great tutorials, and they're better people to watch for these tutorials. Mine is just simple. So if you want to know like a simple way that you can put together a bow without actually creating a fabulous bow, this is the way you do it. Just create a bunch of loops and then attach some longer pieces so it looks like the ribbon part of the bow is hanging off, and then you'll have a bow. I think it turned out really cute. And I may do it again because it was easy and it didn't use a ton of ribbon and it did the trick. And so I added this thinner ribbon as well, just to give it a bit more depth and dimension, and that's it. So after attaching all of the ribbon and dry brushing the little beads, so basically adding all of the final touches, I was happy with the finished product, and here is what it came out to. So now for this DIY, I am using this pumpkin from the Dollar Tree. It is something that I bought when like during Halloween, and it just reminded me of a Santa or a gnome. So I thought this would be great for a Christmas craft, and I was really excited to have found it. I'm sure you could find a Santa in this exact shape too if you wanted to, but I found this, so I bought it right away. So the first step for this project is that I have to remove all of the pipe cleaner off of here, and I'm not cutting it all up. I'm actually going to keep all of that pipe cleaner because I may use it for Halloween next year. And this is another easy project. All the things that you need are basically a mop, some fabric for the hat, and something for the nose, whatever you can find. So what I'm using is I am using a tree skirt that I bought at Dollar Tree for his hat, a Dollar Tree mop for his beard, and one of those styrofoam balls that you can get in a pack at Dollar Tree as well. So again, so we have 1, 2, 3, for the mop, the hat, the nose, and the body. So $4 basically for this one. $5 if you live in Canada, because $1.25, like I said before. Again, and another easy one. This one is a little bit more time consuming because you have to glue the beard, but again, another easy project to do. So what you see me do here is I'm just mopping. I'm just hot gluing the bits of the mop to the gnome. Now, these are already taken off of the mop part. I will link my other gnome videos to the top here. And you can see this is all from one mop head. So I've made, this is now gnome number 3, and I still have bits left over for more if I wanted to. So that mop goes a long way. And you just cut the strings to the length that you want them, and then you glue them one by one to your frame. Once you actually glue all of your pieces down, then what you're going to want to do to make the beard look fluffier and fuller, you're going to want to unravel each one of the mop strings. So you want to make sure when you're gluing it, you're only gluing it at the top, not at the bottom as well. They have to be loose at the bottom. So that way you can unravel them and make the beard look fuller and a little bit kind of like curly, almost like a Santa or a gnome. So it's like, you've seen gnomes before, so it looks that way. Now you could totally add arms or feet to this gnome. I didn't, but you could. And how you unravel these, so they're just like, it's quite easy. You just kind of start separating them. Don't do it too much, because if you start separating them all the way, it'll separate all the way to the top, and then you're not going to have anything left. So then for the hat, I just wrapped the tree skirt around to see how much material I would need. And again, if you've seen me do DIYs before, I don't like to waste things, so I try to be really careful to use the least amount of material that I can. So I cut the material down, and then I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, I used a little bit of the fake snow that you can buy that kind of pulls apart, a little bit like a cotton ball for the top of his hat. You could also use cotton balls. I just didn't have any. So after I glued on the hat and the little pom-pom at the end, I added his nose, which was just that styrofoam ball. I was going to maybe use the wooden beads, but they were too small, so I just used the styrofoam ball. You could also use a ornament, like a Christmas ball ornament, if you had that on hand. I chose to use this because I had it on hand. And I left it white because I wanted his nose to be white. So again, this was a very quick and inexpensive but very cute DIY.
We are going to be making a springtime wreath. This is one of my favorite projects to do, so let's get started and I'll show you how I've done it. So I got my supplies, most of my supplies from the Dollar Tree. I got all of these springtime flowers there for $1.25. I am in Canada, so it's $1.25, not $1. So you can see I had some darker and lighter lavender, as well as these lovely spring flowers that have some yellow and some pink and some purple in them. The only thing that I did not get from the Dollar Tree is my actual wreath part, where I'll be attaching all of these springs to. That I wound up actually getting from Facebook Marketplace from a lady who was selling a whole bunch of these for just under $1 each. What I'm actually doing is I'm going to be attaching the springs to the wreath diagonally. I've had to cut the stems down a little bit because they were just too long and unflexible. I couldn't really do what I wanted to do with them, and I'm going to be kind of stacking them side by side, but as you can see, I've cut them quite a bit off, and I've separated them, and then I will be attaching them with some floral wire. As you can see, I've done that here. And some of it will be showing, as you can see, but I'm going to be cutting that off after. So for now it'll work. I just need to make sure that they're on tight. So what I've done is I've also bundled them together, which I found was a little bit easier than trying to do one by one. I did do one by one to like to fill in the spaces where they needed to be filled in, but for the most part I bundled them. And here is the finished project. I quite like the way this project turned out. So as you can see, I filled in all of the spots. So none of the wreath is showing, and the colors are beautiful. So I'm doing a little sign that I will use for my household decor. So again, I'm painting 2 scrap pieces of wood white. I'm going to paint them pretty well just so they're covered. I think I'll only do one coat because it's just I'm only doing one coat because they're fairly, I mean, the wood's not painted or anything. So I'm using again the Valspar paint because again that's what I had on hand, and I will be connecting these two with just a bracket that I had lying around. Once they've dried, I'm going to go ahead and distress them, and I am using the Art Minds paint from Michaels, as well as my Annie Sloan brush. And I'm just going to distress them by dry brushing a little bit of the chalk paint on. It's the espresso, the Art Minds espresso. So what you do is you put a little bit on your brush and then you dab it off. So I'm using the lid and I'm dabbing some of it off, and then you just go ahead and just put it in random patterns, and not random patterns, random lines on your piece that you're wanting to distress. What I usually wind up doing is if I feel like I've done too much or too little, well, too much, so I'll go back over with the white and just to achieve the look that I'm looking for. There's no right or wrong to doing this. It's whatever you want the look to be. So I always add a little bit more on the edges, and then I just do some distressing on the front and sides. So once everything dried, I wound up using my Cricut to cut out a Market Fresh stencil, and I am using my Annie Sloan dark wax to color in the stencil. This is kind of messy, but it turned out really nice, I think. So it's messy while you're doing it. I wound up using, thinking I would use a rag, then I went ahead and got my brush, and then I wound up even using my finger to fill it in for the market. Then for the fresh, I used a nice paintbrush, and it seemed to work better. So it's pretty messy doing this, but I really like the way it turned out because it's not perfect, so it makes it look super antique. So here's the finished product. I love, love, love the way it turned out. I think it is perfectly imperfect. So I created my memo holder. We're using this sign from the Dollar Tree. I don't actually know when I got this, why I got this, where it came from, but I had it. I keep a stash of things that I want to redo or reuse, and I just put them in a box. And I found this in there, and I thought it would be perfect for my project. So what I had to do with it first was paint it out. I am painting both sides because this will be a memo holder that I keep in my kitchen, so you'll be able to see the back side sometimes too. So I wanted it to be kind of nice on both sides. I'm not going to make the back side as nice as the front side, but at least it doesn't have that ugly hope writing on it. So I'll show you what I've done. So I started off by removing the little wire because it is a sign, so for hanging. Once I removed that, I went ahead and I painted it. Now for the paint, I used the Art Minds Espresso as well as the Art Minds Lilac. I mixed those two together and I watered it down a little bit. I probably put about 75% espresso and 25% lilac, mixed it up and just painted it out. And that is my base for this. Make sure you sand it beforehand a little bit just to get the paint to stick on it a bit better. But no really rhyme or reason to what you're doing here because, for me at least, because I'm going to be painting it so many different colors. I'm just really using this as a base coat because I'm just going to be layering the paint on. So I have this leftover piece from another project. Someone had actually given us a big piece of this, I don't know, maybe melamine, or I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, I know what it is. Particle board. There we go. I just couldn't think of the word. And so my husband went and just put a little bit of a slot in here so that I could attach my sign. Now, I was going to do this with my handsaw. I tried and I tried and I tried and I did not succeed, so he wound up using an angle grinder to just put this little slit in here. So I'm going to attach this in here. But first I want to paint this out. Now I painted the other side. I just did one coat and I'm going to do another coat. And then I'm going to do this side. And I'm actually going to do several different paint colors. So the first paint color is going to be the same as I did the back side. And then I'm going to layer it after that. So I still have it left over. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that on. Now I do have some white in here because I was using this paintbrush for something white. It doesn't matter because I am doing, like I said, several coats of this. I wanted to go ahead and paint the other side simply because it won't be as nice. Well, I might actually make it the same as the other side. I'm not sure. I haven't decided, but it's just so that, you know, if I have it somewhere where you can see the back side, it doesn't look like it was such a DIY. There we go. I'm going to have to just kind of have this propped up for it to dry, which is okay. I'm going to use this guy here. There we go. There. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint this the same color. This will probably have a harder time sticking just because it is that shiny material. I did sand it down a little bit, but just like barely. I probably should have done more, but live and learn. As I'm doing it right now, as I'm painting, I think about it and I'm like, oh shoot, I should have done more. Because I did it when I first saw it, I just did like a light sand, but I should have probably done it with my palm sander. That's okay. It'll work. Just have to do several coats. Okay, so while that dries, I was going to paint this a different color, but I think I'm going to leave it this way. I might distress it a bit. This is a candle holder from the Dollar Tree. Now I was going to use this for, I had made a two-tier tray, which I was going to make a 3-tier tray.
No, I did. I made a 3-tier tray, but I was going to actually put the tray on top of this as well. But then I didn't like the way it looked, but I had already painted it. And I believe I used the black stainless steel from Rust-Oleum, like the hammered paint they have. I did this about 2 years ago, so. But I do like the color, and it did stick on here pretty well. So yeah, I'll be using this as well. Now that this is pretty much dried, I'm going to go ahead and paint it white. I'm going to use just my Valspar paint because I still have it left over. This part is not quite dry, so I'm going to just flip it over and do the other side first. I'm a little bit crunched for time, so that's why I am doing it this way. Normally I would let things dry, but now it's going to be like a kind of a different color on the back a little bit. Like I said, I'm okay with that. Because I just don't want it to be like the original. So I wind up using 2 coats of the Valspar Ultra Semi-Gloss paint. I'll show you in the next clip of what that looks like, just in case I didn't do a good job showing the last time. So I do 2 coats just to get it to be completely white, and I'm doing both the base as well as the top. I have inserted the base into, the sign into the base, into the little slot, and I had to cut off a little bit of it at the bottom just to make it fit a bit better. And so because the Valspar paint was semi-gloss and not a chalk paint, it is a little bit shinier, so I'm just going to sand it down. And you can see the brush strokes and everything, which is okay by me. I'm just going to sand off the sides to get a little bit of that distressing. And now I'm just going to go over with some of the espresso just to distress it a little bit more. So I'm making sure that I wipe off the excess so it's not too much. Okay, so I've distressed this piece as much as I wanted to. I heavily distressed it on the sides and then a little bit more over here. That's kind of the look that I'm going for. And then I'm using my Valspar paint, and I'm just going to distress the holder part of it. So this part I did too much, so I can always like wipe it off if I've done too much, which is great. And just, like I said, just want to distress it a bit. There we go. I might actually distress it a little bit with my duck egg blue as well. So I'm distressing this with the duck egg blue because my kitchen has an island. Well, the countertop in the whole kitchen is black with little bits of like, it looks like blue. I don't know that it is blue, but just the way the light shines on it. So I've painted my island a duck egg blue. So I'm just going to add this just so it kind of brings out those colors. Again, you want to make sure you brush off the excess. And just very lightly I'm painting it on, which will give me that aged look that I am going for. As these dry, I'm going to just paint my clothespin a whole bunch of different colors, I think. What I'll do is I'll paint it the duck egg blue, and then I'll just distress it. So I painted the clothespin a whole bunch of colors. I painted it with the duck egg blue, the Valspar white, as well as the espresso, just to give it kind of the same aged effect as the main piece. So here's the finished piece in several different ways that you could use it, just to give you guys some ideas. So I'm switching gears a little bit and moving into fall and Halloween, and then I will end with some Christmas and some, I guess, all year round, but I did it in the summer DIYs. I am going to be using this pumpkin to create my DIY. I'm taking off the little maple leaf as well as the little bow, and I'm actually going to use the other side of the pumpkin. I'm going to paint it in the Annie Sloan Duck Egg Blue. And actually, I'll be painting it several colors, but that's the first coat that I'm putting on. And once that dries, I will dry brush the pumpkin with the Rust-Oleum Country Gray. And I will do the stem part of the pumpkin in the Art Minds Espresso from Michaels. Now I'm using that same Art Minds Espresso paint to paint out the little wire basket. This little wire basket I got at Dollar Tree a long time ago. I've noticed that they don't have these kinds of metal ones anymore, but you can really use any kind from the Dollar Tree. And I'm putting the brown on there just to make it a little bit more aged instead of that shiny silver color. And I'm also doing the same thing to the maple leaf. So I'm just dry brushing the brown on, and then I'm going to do the stem in a full brown, and that's it for that. So while I let that, after that dries, then I'll be applying my dry brushing. So when you're dry brushing, what that means is that you dip the paint in a little bit and then you dab it off on a paper towel or something, or a rag or whatever. So I'm just doing light coats, and then I'm doing also dry brushing this Valspar white paint that I have. It's just an interior paint that I had on hand. So I dry brush that as well, and I'm going to be adding the Annie Sloan dark wax on this as well. And I'm going to just wipe it down. Now, it took a little bit more than I wanted it to, so I just added more of the duck egg back on. And then I'm going to be just drawing the lines like that pumpkins have on here, just to have a little bit of dimension in here. Then I go ahead and I use my Cricut, and I did the design that you saw in my thumbnail. I downloaded a font that I liked, and then I just cut it out with my Cricut. Now I made my stencil using a stenciling vinyl that I got off of Amazon, and here I'm just measuring to see where I'm going to put my basket so that I know how far I can do the writing. I've also drilled 2 little holes at the bottom because I'm going to attach the basket using just a little bit of either jute rope or just regular rope, whatever fits through. Then I dabbed on my writing, my stencil, like in the just an acrylic, black acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree. So when you're dabbing on the paint, you want to make sure that you're not using too much of it, otherwise it'll bleed through. I'm using just a little stencil brush from the Dollar Tree, and I'm letting both, like I'm letting the, I'm doing one stencil at a time and I'm letting them dry in between. So that way I'm not making a mess. And because I have limited room and I don't want to cut the letters out completely because then I'm gonna get paint all over, obviously. So letting it dry, and then I'm putting the other stencil, letting it dry, putting the other stencil. I always use transfer paper to transfer my images, otherwise it'll stretch the vinyl too much. So after I've stenciled on the writing, I just go over my with my duck egg blue over the lines that I created for the pumpkin because I wasn't happy with them. And I wrap the basket just in a black and white ribbon that I had on hand. And I make a little bow that I'm going to hot glue to the top of the pumpkin. I will be hot gluing the little maple leaf as well to the front of the basket. So here it is, the basket put together. Now I have to assemble the greenery. So this is just, I believe, a eucalyptus leaf that I got from the Dollar Tree for $1.25. And then I have these pumpkins that were 3 for $1.25, also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to put them in at the bottom into the basket until I get them to look the way I want it. So I'm just using my wire cutters to cut off the branches. And these are the little pumpkins with the clips. So these I'm just going to put them on one on top of the other. I'm not clipping them on or anything. So here is the finished piece, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I purchased this acorn. It's a wooden acorn from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using it as a piece of decor to go with my Thanksgiving/fall decor. So what I'm going to start off with doing is just painting it with a brown acrylic paint. It's the espresso from Dollar Tree, and the top part of it I'm going to paint in this espresso color. And then I will add some jute rope in right underneath, and then I will stain it with Annie Sloan dark wax at the bottom. So really simple craft, fairly cheap to make. The only thing you might not have on hand is the wax, and you can really use you could use acrylic paint. If you just mix maybe some brown and espresso together, you would achieve the same type of color. For the top, that's what I'm doing for the little stem as well. And then I'm just adding a little bit of more black to the brown just to make it a bit darker, just because it was a little bit too orangey, this brown. But like I said, you could do this anyway, and you could make it fairly cost effective if you didn't have the wax. I happen to have the wax on hand, and I use it quite a bit in a lot of my crafts, so that's what I'm doing. The jute rope is also from the Dollar Tree, and you only need a few pieces of it. You don't need too much of it. So again, this is a super easy, super quick craft. I will hot glue to the jute rope and then stain, and that's it. After I glue the jute rope, I go ahead and I do the dark wax, and I'm just using an old rag to apply it, and then I'll use a little bit of a brush to get it in, right underneath the jute rope. What you could do is do the jute rope at the end and just have it cover all of the pieces, but I chose to do it this way. So it doesn't really matter the way you do it. I didn't mind if having to go over it with a brush. So although I like the finished product here, I decided that I wanted to add a little bit of a bow. So what I did was I just cut a few pieces of this gold ribbon that I had from a different project, and I made little loops, and because I don't really know how to make very nice bows, and then I'm just going to glue it on here in the corner just to add a little bit of decor. And that's it. This piece is nice and finished. video. I'm making a wreath using all Dollar Tree items. I'm starting with 4 of these pumpkin, I think they're plates, that I just recently got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm painting them with the linen white from Rust-Oleum. And I will be doing 1 coat of this paint and then a coat of this soft warm white that I got, like acrylic paint. So I'm just going to be brushing that over top of these once they dry. While they're drying and before I can apply the second coat of paint, I'm going to wrap the leaf, not the leaf, the wreath parts in burlap. So again, these are from the Dollar Tree as well. And I wanted to use the foam ones instead of the other ones they had because I figured if I needed to poke something through for these, I could. So I'm going to be using this piece of burlap as well as another piece that I had used on a wreath for a previous project, but I didn't like the way it turned out. So, but they're both from the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm just wrapping it around. I've hot glued the first bit, like the first part of it, and then I'm going to hot glue the end, and I'm really wrapping it around tightly, and I'm just overlapping at the ends, just so you can't see the green, but I'm not like totally overlapping. So you don't have to waste a lot of burlap. It's pretty good coverage. You could paint the wreaths if you wanted to, like a lighter brown color, so that way it doesn't show through, but you can hardly see it. I mean, you can't even see anything once I've done, like when you overlap at the ends, so you can see that. So here you can see that this one is a little bit wrinkled, so I'm just going to be doing the same thing for all 4. So once you complete those, your pumpkins should be dry and you can apply your second coat of white, whether you wanted to apply like another coat of just the Rust-Oleum chocolate and white, or whether you wanted to do this, it's up to you. I wanted the pumpkin to have to look like those white, kind of creamy white pumpkins that you see at the store. So that's the look that I wanted for these, but I didn't want them to be all creamy white because it would have been too yellow, I think. So you can see I'm just using this sponge to do this, and it's not difficult at all, and it's not perfect. I'm just adding it to the creases and lightly spreading the paint. I will also be painting the stem of these pumpkins in the Art Minds Espresso chalk paint. It's the little can from Michael's, just to give it like a more realistic look. Now you don't have to use the chalk paint. You can use an acrylic paint if you have it on hand. It's whatever you have on hand. Now to assemble the wreath, I was thinking about using a skewer and just attaching them that way. Then I decided to use the glue. But it wasn't holding it the way I wanted it to hold, so I wound up using some jute rope and I tied them all together as well. So there's glue, there's jute rope, and that's how I had them stick together. Now, before you attach the pumpkins to the wreath, you want to, if you're going to write something, you want to write it on now. So I'm going to write the word fall, each letter on each pumpkin, and I decided not to use my Cricut for this, mostly because I thought I could do it freehand with a Sharpie. And because the pumpkin is a little bit bumpy, I was worried if I did a stencil, I wouldn't, like, it would leak. Um, so I just did this freehand. I just did like bubble letters. I measured them to make sure that they were the same size. And I did them in pencil first just to make sure that, you know, if I made a mistake, that I could erase it. And then I used a Sharpie just to go over top of the letters, and then I colored them in with the Sharpie one by one. And I think they turned out great. Now, to attach the pumpkins to the wreaths, I first just wanted to have a look to see how I wanted them attached. So I put them on and fidgeted around with them, and then I glued E6000 glue. Now, I did a combination of the E6000 and hot glue because I wanted that immediate hold right away, and I wasn't able to put anything heavy on top of these to make sure that the um, E6000 stuck properly. So this combination worked well. I've done it before where I haven't been able to get it to work, but it worked this time, so I'm really happy with it. So I added quite a bit of the glue, like both hot glue and the E6000. They're sticking really nicely, not falling off or anything like that, so it was a good combination. And so here's the finished wreath on my door. I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. I think it looks beautiful. So I got the sign from the Dollar Tree actually last year, and I noticed that they had it again this year, and I never really used it, but I kind of like both signs separately, so I'm gonna paint out the back of this sign, and I'm just using the espresso from Art Minds from Costco, and I'm gonna be painting that out. And then I have these two little pieces of wood, and I'm using that as my base, and I'm gonna hot glue the sign into those pieces. Those are just scrap pieces of wood that I kept from doing a from doing like a frame around a shelving unit. So I'm going to paint them out first in the espresso, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint them out in a white from Valspar. Now, after I painted it, I remembered that this white is really shiny and it didn't give me that chalky finish, but you'll see what I'm talking about. But I wound up fixing it by adding some wax, but just keep that in mind if you're not using chalk paint, because you could totally do this with acrylic paint. It's just going to be shinier than a chalk paint is. You'll also need something like these leaves I just got these leaves from Dollar Tree for $1.25, but there's a whole bunch of them in there. I only used two, so I'm gonna say that cost me like 10 cents. And I'm going to paint those out in the brown as well. You could totally cut out the maple leaf yourself, or like any kind of leaf yourself. You could use whatever you wanted. You don't have to use these ones. I just chose to use these ones. Then you'll also need some sort of bow. I'm using just leftover twine, so you could use that. You could make whatever kind of bow you would want, with rope, with whatever you have on hand. So I'm just painting it to get a whiter color. Now, I purposely did not wash my brush because I wanted some of the brown to stay on. So you'll see it's not quite white. And then I'm dry brushing that white onto the little pieces of wood and the leaves. So dry brushing is when you just wipe off the excess paint and just have a little bit of a lighter coat on them. And then you let that dry. I'm going to use my Cricut. Again, you could use this freehand if you are able to, but I'm using my Cricut, and I have cut out the word fall. So it's a little bit different. I didn't do blessed, I did fall. And I used just craft foam because I thought that would look the best. Again, you could use cardboard, you could use black cardstock and just cut it out, whatever you had on hand. So again, like I said, I'm just putting on the black wax just to dull it a little bit so it's not so shiny, because I did not want the shiny look. But like I said, it really doesn't matter how you do it. If you wanted this look, I use chalk paint, but you don't have to if you don't have it on hand. So now I'm just hot gluing the base to the pumpkin. And you can see I didn't do the back because it's going to go against a wall. And then I'm going to hot glue these little leaves on, and then I'm putting the bow on top to cover the little hole. I could have filled it in, but I chose not to. And then I hot glue the fall onto the pumpkin. I'm just adding a little bit of foam so it looks like the F is a little bit longer at the beginning and the L is a little bit longer. And then that will hold my words to the pumpkin. Then I just hot glue them to the side. And here's the finished piece. So guys, I am also on Instagram and on Facebook, so if you haven't had a chance to check those pages out, make sure you check them out. For Instagram, it's Vesna_TV, and for Facebook, it's Vesna TV. So check me out. Everything is linked in my description below, so you don't even have to go and search for me. So if you want to, give me a big like or follow me on those social media, make sure you do that. On to number 9. So I'm going to start off with a witch's cauldron from the Dollar Tree. Then I have these little paper towel rolls, and I have some skewers, as well as these witch's feet from the Dollar Tree. And then I will also use some floral foam and some moss. And that is it. It is going to be a super duper easy project to do. So I'm just cutting down the fluorofoam so I can fit it into the cauldron, so I can fit it nicely, and so I can put the skewers in there. So originally I thought I was just going to do it like that, and then I cut little pieces and I put them in between. You'll see me doing that a bit later. Then I have to cut off the top over here because I think the feet were just kind of hangers, like door hangers or something like that. So I'm going to cut this off, and of course I'm going to save it for later because I might use it for a different project. And I'm cutting as close as I can to the top so I can cut the little ring off. And then I thought maybe there would be holes in there, but there aren't, so I had to cut out holes as well. So I just cut off this piece in there, this little tool as well. Then I went ahead and I put in the paper towel rolls into the feet, like into the legs, to make them have a shape that stands up. And I just put them in as far as it went and then rolled a little bit because the feet were a little bit longer than the roll itself. But I just wound up just putting it in so it has a nice finish. And then I put the skewer in, and I did the same thing for the other leg. And when I went to put it in the cauldron, I had a bit of a hard time with it not falling over. So that's why I wound up adding more of the moss in so it's nice and tight in there. You could add something heavier in there as well and just have them stick in that way. I just thought this was the easiest, and really the only two things that I bought were the witch's feet and the cauldron because I had the moss and the floral foam on hand. And then I also noticed that these feet were flapping over, and I really wanted them to be standing up straight. So I had just a little piece of wood. It's actually from a stir stick that I had painted and cut off for another project. So again, any scrap piece of wood or anything you have, you could add. And I just wound up adding it to the back there, hot gluing it, and that helped for the feet to stand up. So you'll notice here that I'm just cutting the foam into little strips so I can fit it all nice and tight into the cauldron, and then I just add the moss. Now moss is messy, but the cauldron is a little bit higher than the moss, so it's not falling out. But if you wanted it to stick, I actually got a tip from one of my YouTube viewers, probably another YouTuber, I'm not sure, I can't remember, but she had said that sometimes hairspray works. I did try it with my other projects. It didn't stick it together that well. Now maybe I just needed a better hairspray, but it did help with some of the mess. So if you're thinking that it's too messy, spray some of that hairspray and it should do the trick. So here are the feet flapping over. So here's where I also add that little piece of wood. And again, I'm just using hot glue to glue it on to the back of the feet. And I wind up painting it all black so that way, I think I said it earlier in the video that it was painted black, but it wasn't. So I'm just going to color it in with a Sharpie in black just so that it matches the feet in case I ever want to move the cauldron a different way, or if I want to put it in a spot where you can see it from both sides, then this way it won't look so bad well, you won't even be able to tell that there's a little piece of wood there. And that is all there is to this DIY. It was super easy to do, very cheap to make. If you had to buy all these things, it would cost you under $5. And I've seen these a few times and they're quite expensive. So, but they're super cute. So here it is. I'm going to be creating a shadow box using this haunted house from the Dollar Tree and just a scrap cardboard box from actually a box of tomatoes. So to start off, I'm going to be painting the inside of the box orange. I have this orange acrylic paint that I bought at the Dollar Tree. It was the only one that they had, so that's the one that I'm using. So you can just see what the shade of orange is in there. And I'm just going to cover the box so that you can't see the cardboard on the inside. I thought I was going to do another coat of the orange, but after it dried, I liked the coverage, so I left it. Now you could totally do a darker orange if you had it. It's whatever you have on hand. Um, but this is what I had, and it it covered it fine. I do wind up using a bit of a baby wipe just to blend all of the colors together. Not a bit of a baby wipe. I use a baby wipe to blend the orange to the cardboard, as you can see that I'm doing here. After this dries, I go ahead and I deal with the outside of the box, and I use black paint for the outside of the box. But before I go ahead to paint that, I want to paint my haunted house, which I'm also painting black, and I'm just using a Dollar Tree acrylic black paint to do this, and I'm using the just a Dollar Tree brush to paint on the black paint. I only need to do one coat. It's easy coverage. It's a dark color and a light color, so super easy to do. Then for the sides of the box, I'm not doing the back of the box, but for the sides of the box, I'm using just leftover black house paint that we had on hand. That little sample there that you can see, it's a bare black paint, but it could be anything you wanted. I just didn't want to use up all of my acrylic paint because I'm running low. Now I wound up doing a little bit of the black kind of seeping into the orange on the inside, just to give it kind of like a spookier look. And once everything dried, I cut out this tree just from black cardstock, and I just drew it out with my like freehand. And then I had these foam cats and bats and owls just left over from different projects. And then I went ahead and I used, because I only had a purple bat, I wound up cutting it out from one of the cats, just doing my own bat. After those are cut out, I wind up just assembling the shadow box and seeing how I like it before I glue everything on. So this is what you should do before you glue things on as well, just to make sure that this is the look you're going for. I'm using hot glue, so it's not permanent, so I could take it off, but sometimes it takes the paint off, so then you just have to redo it. So make sure you're happy with what you're putting on before you glue it down. And after I've glued that down, I go ahead and I place some lights into the shadow box. These are the mini lights from Dollar Tree. They were $1.25. I'm in Canada, so everything's $1.25, with the copper wire. And I put them on the inside of the box through that little hole that you could see at the bottom there. I put the cable through there, and then that way the on and off switch is easily accessible behind the shadow box, and then you can't see it on the inside of the shadow box. I did wind up moving the owl. Now the owl was a self-stick one, so it was easy to remove off of the branch. And here's the spooky haunted house shadow box. In this DIY, I'll be using the Merry and Bright wooden sign that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I mean, plain on its own is pretty nice, but I wanted to kind of make it stand out a bit more. So what I'm going to start off with doing is painting it in the Holiday Red acrylic paint, which I also got at the Dollar Tree. And I only need to do one coat of this. It's fairly easy to do, so I'm just going to paint it in that holiday red and let it dry off. Um, don't mind my mat. I do a lot of painting on this mat. I'm trying not to damage my table so much, so I've cleaned it off. So I'm going to be using this mat. I will eventually either paint the mat or try to steam off the paint. We'll see. To make sure the sign looks completely painted, you want to make sure that you're going in between the letters as well, so you're getting the grooves, otherwise the brown will show. So once you've got the paint covered to your liking, then what you're going to do is find a piece of cardboard. I'm using the lid of a pizza box. And you could use the white part, but I wanted it to kind of look a little bit rustic, so I'm using the brown part. And I'm not going to cut off the edges until I'm done painting, and I'm simply doing this just so that way I don't have to be careful on the edges of getting it on my mat or on my table. And you're going to basically kind of dry brush this on. You don't want to cake on too much paint. Some spots you can, but you want to kind of do a light coat of this so the brown shows through and gives that rustic feel. So once that's painted, what you want to do is use little pieces of wood. You could use the garden picks if you got them from the Dollar Tree. I ran out, so I had these two long paint sticks from Lowe's, which I'm using. They were left over from when we painted our house. We got one of those huge cans, so we got a few of these. So I'm going to use these as my frame. You could really use any kind of wood. You could even use the Jenga blocks, like the tumbling tower blocks for this. And so I'm just measuring out how big I want them to be, and I am just making them slightly bigger than my box. If you're using the garden picks, you could probably cut them with scissors. These are a little bit thicker, so I'm just using my little saw here to cut them off, and then I'm going to just use some leftover sandpaper just to sand off the edges so that they're smooth. Once I've sanded them down, I'm just using my Annie Sloan soft wax and then I'm using the dark wax to start, just to go over them and stain them a little bit. I always use it, well, sometimes I use a brush. This time I'm using a rag. You can use either or. I like the rag because you can rub it on and then rub off the excess, so it just soaks in however much you want. So I make sure I get all the edges and everything around. And with the wax, it's important to let it dry a little bit in between coats if you want to add a second coat. So that way you're not rubbing off everything. So just to let the wood soak it in a bit. So once you let the sticks set a little bit, then you can go ahead and cut off the edges around your box to make it the size that you want it. You might have already done this step, so this is what I did. I did it after. And then you're going to hot glue the sticks as your border, but I'm only doing the top and bottom. So before I actually glue them on, I take my rag that's already got a little bit of wax on it and just rub it over top of the pizza box, the painted pizza box, because I'm wanting a little bit of the antiquing to show through. And then when I put my sticks, I notice that they're a little bit lighter than I want them to be, so I just go back and I add the Annie Sloan black wax. You could achieve this color using a mixture of paints if you don't have the wax. So after I got the look that I wanted for my wax, I'm just putting a healthy amount of hot glue onto these sticks and just gluing them right onto the box. The only thing you have to watch out for, sometimes the box warps a little bit, so you may put something on the back. If it's warping too much, you could do like just one of these stir sticks diagonally, or What I did just to get the Mary to stick is I put something heavy on top, you'll see at the end of the video, and that also helped with keeping the box from warping too much and having it stick nicely. So for the Mary, I used, I was going to use some hot glue, but then I decided I just wanted the weld bond. Because the hot glue can kind of be a little bit bumpy and make it stand up a little bit more, I thought this would be a better option for the box. You might be able to make hot glue work too, so but I'm using Weld Bond, and you could do Gorilla Glue, whichever glue you have on hand. And what you want to do is you want to kind of move it to the center of the um, picture that you have, or if you want it slightly up or slightly down, it's up to you. I've got mine in the center and a little bit higher, and that's it. Then I put a bottle of like a kilogram of Epsom salts on top just to have it make sure that it has the Mary stick to the cardboard box, and I left it for a couple of hours. And after several hours, here's what it looks like. I love it. I'm really excited to show you my version of this joy wreath. I got this idea somewhat from Glue Guns and Roses, but I tweaked it to be my own. So what I'm doing is using these two wreath forms, and they are the candy cane wreath forms, and I'm going to be using the Dollar Tree garland as well. So you'll need two garlands and two of these wreath forms, as well as just a normal round wreath form or anything that you have round that's kind of like a wreath. So I'm just pulling the garland through the first one, and then I just wrap the rest of them all around. I do it on the first one and I twist it around like just at the top, and then I just wrap it around so it covers the entire wreath. And now this is not quite one full garland. I had cut off maybe, I don't know, like 10 inches off of this for another project that I was doing. So it's missing a little bit. So I apologize for the awkward angle of this, but it was a little bit difficult to, just with the space that I have, to show you this so that you could see the entire process, because I'm twisting and turning it, wrapping it around, but you get the idea. I'm wrapping it all around until I get to the very top, and then again I twist it around the top, and I'll just speed it up here. And here's the J completed. Again, really easy and inexpensive way to make this. For the Y, I will also be using the candy cane form. However, I'm going to be cutting it so that I can make the Y. So what I need to do is right at the bottom, kind of where it meets the other part of like the end of the Y, I'm just going to cut it so that I can make a Y. So as you can see, I'm just, like I said, so that both sides, it looks like a U once you cut it, so but both sides are even, so that's where you want to cut it, so it, like wherever the candy cane starts, like the neck, and then ends. So there you go. That's what I mean. I'm not explaining it well, but you can see now. And then I'm going to join these together. I am using some hot glue, but I also wind up using twist ties because it just doesn't hold it the way I'd like it to hold when I'm twisting it and turning it to wrap the garland around. So I tried the hot glue. It wasn't doing what I needed it to do, so I'm going to do the twist ties, and you can add hot glue if you'd like to, just to kind of give it another more secure hold, but this does a really good job. So I'm just adding a couple twist ties and making them as tight as I can. And then that'll give me the Y shape. So like I said, like a really easy DIY today. And again, I'm going to wrap the garland the same way. So I'll start with the tops and then I'll do the bottom. I will cut it off and then continue. I'm just going to speed it up again because you don't need to hear me talking about how I'm doing this. But yeah, so you can see I also just added it here, but it didn't really do too much. So the twist ties were a better option. And that is it for the Y. Then you just want to adjust it, making sure that you kind of cover all of the metal parts of it. And for the O, I opted, now you could use anything that you can find. I opted to use one of these green wreath forms, also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to be using the burlap ribbon and just wrapping it around this wreath form. It gives me like a break from the green. Now you could, I've seen, this is where the twist was. The video that I saw used like a wreath already made out of like the garland. But like I think she bought it somewhere already done. So for mine I used this because I wanted to break up the green a little bit. So I'm just going to hot glue the first part and then I'm going to twist it around just until I get it so it doesn't show the green. And so leaving the ribbon as is, I felt that it wasn't done. So the wreath as is, I felt like it wasn't done. So I wanted to add some of this Dollar Tree ribbon. And I'm just going to be making my version of a bow. We've talked about this in my other videos. You've watched them. So I make my own version of bows. So I'm just going to cut as much as I think I need. I'll cut a few pieces. Basically, I just hot glue the bow to the wreath. Now, I kind of contemplated, did I want the O to kind of hang from the J? But then I decided I did not. So I'm just creating this bow and I'm going to speed it up because you don't need to watch the whole process. But I will be hot gluing these pieces together because I'm not liking the way it looks when you just tie it like a shoelace. So after I finished the bow to the way that I liked it, I contemplated putting in some pine cones, but then decided against it. And here are the versions. Here's the completed version with the Y being tilted. So before we move on to number 5, I did want to let you guys know that I'm changing my schedule. I'm going to have a set schedule. It'll be Tuesdays and Fridays. If I do change because I want to support another YouTuber by participating in their collaboration or challenge or anything like that, or if I have something come up with family or with my job, I will let you know in advance over on my community, because I have a community now, so I can let you guys know if I'm changing the date of my videos, so you're always informed and you kind of know when to expect my videos. They'll be posted at 3 every Tuesday and Friday, but like I said, if I change the times for any reason, I will let you guys know. But for now, that is the plan. Having a full-time job, I may have to cut that down to once a week. We'll see. I'm going to try really hard to do 2 videos a week because I really enjoy doing them. And we are almost there, on to number 5. So the DIY that I'm doing is a snowman, and I'm using these snow globes from the Dollar Tree. I'm using 2 of them. I'm taking off the lids and all of that stuff, and I'm putting it off to the side. I won't be using it for this craft, but I might be able to use it for something else. And I am painting the inside of the snowman with a mixture of Rust-Oleum chalk paint and water. And the reason I'm using this is because I had already made that mixture, and I just wanted to see if I watered it down whether it would be a better fit or not. I do wind up doing several coats of this, so maybe if you just use straight paint you wouldn't have to do so many coats, but I was also just sometimes the straight Rust-Oleum paint is quite thick, so I wanted it to be a little bit more runny, so it's not, I don't know, I thought it might glob too much. So, but the main reason I used this was because I had it on hand. You could go with acrylic as well, um, but the chalk paint worked really well. The watered down chalk paint worked well. So I wound up trying the acrylic paint, but I thought that the chalk paint worked better. They both worked okay, but I like to work with chalk paint better. So after 2 or 3 coats, depending on your paint, this is what they look like. Then I'm going to connect them together. I'm going to use a combination of Weld Bond and hot glue, so that way I can make sure that it's a permanent hold and the snowman doesn't fall apart. So I'm just going to put this one over top of the other one and just hold them tight for a little bit. The reason I'm using the combination is because the hot glue will give me that immediate hold and the Weld Bond will give the permanent hold. So I'm just going to pop the hot glue over here. I wind up having to kind of adjust it a little bit because I didn't take into consideration the curve of the globe. So you just want to hold this for, 10-15 seconds, and that'll give you that hold from the hot glue, so that way you can do your work. I'm not concerned about the glue showing on the sides or anything like that, because I'm going to be putting a scarf over that, so I don't have to worry about it. But while that sets, I'm going to be making the snowman's hat. For the hat, I'm going to be using this leftover ribbon roll. So there was that faux fur from the Dollar Tree, and it came on just a little bit of a higher ribbon roll, and I'm just going to be painting it black because it was the perfect shape for his top hat. And I'm just using acrylic, black acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree. Once you cover this completely, then you can set it off to dry. I did not worry too much about covering the bottom part of it completely because it's going on the snowman anyway. I just had to do one coat. By the time I went over the whole thing, the top part there that I had to go over dried up a bit, so I just put a little bit of black paint over top and that's it. So while that dries, I'm going to attach the scarf and draw on his nose and his eyes. For his scarf, I'm using Dollar Tree ribbon. I just hot glue the scarf around his neck, and then I make a bow that I hot glue together. I made little loops and then I hot glued them together to make a bow for his scarf. For his eyes, I'm just using acrylic paint, and for his nose, I'm just cutting out a triangle shape from my foam, orange foam, and I'm just hot gluing it on. I also use the black paint for his buttons. You could do anything you wanted. I just thought freehand drawing it would be just as good as hot gluing something. Now for the bottom of the snowman, I'm just gluing on a piece of cardboard, and then I'm going to be making kind of snow around the snowman. For the snow, I'm just using like the fake spider webs from Halloween. I was going to use hot glue to attach the spider webs to the cardboard, but then I wound up using Mod Podge because it worked a bit better. Unfortunately, I don't have the best view of me doing this, but I wind up attaching some of the ribbon around the top hat. As well, I attach a little green pick. You can see it in the picture there. As well as some pine cones, like the miniature pine cones, to the top of his hat, just for extra added decor. Before I hot glue the hat to his head, I just position it, making sure that I'm putting it in the right spot where I want it. And then I hot glue it just so that I'm not hot gluing it the wrong way. So that is it for this DIY. I think it turned out really cute. He is adorable. I'm going to be using Dollar Tree Christmas trees to make a cute gnome. So for the supplies, you're going to need two of these Christmas trees from the Dollar Tree, some black paint and some white paint. So I'm just using these acrylic paints. You could use chalk paint if you have it. You could use whatever paint you have on hand. Then this fur I might and might not use. These berries, maybe. And then this rag from the Dollar Tree, this dishcloth. And I have these Crocs there also from the Dollar Tree. They were my son's, I think, before he even really learned how to walk, or maybe he was just learning how to walk. I don't know. They're just little slippers we had for around the pool. They don't fit him anymore, so I'm going to be painting them black, and those will be the shoes for my gnome. So I only needed one coat of the black. And you don't have to, if you have boots or anything like that that you could use, you could do that. I just didn't have anything that I wanted to use for this that I thought I could use for this. I thought I had a pair of ceramic boots, like a little planter that looked like boots, but I must have seen it somewhere. I couldn't find it. Then maybe I don't have it. I must have seen it at someone's house and thought that was really neat, but then I thought I had it, or maybe I thought I was going to buy it. I don't know. Sometimes I think I have things and I don't actually have them. So once they are painted and covered all the way through, you can set them off to dry, and you can start to make your little gnome. Now, whatever you decide to use for your feet, it doesn't matter, like I said. You'll just have to either connect it together somehow, if it's not together. And you're going to need some floral foam as well, which I forgot to show you at the beginning of the video. And the floral foam will be so that you can stick your tree in it, and then you stick it into the shoe itself. So for the tree, you're going to take the bottom part of it off, and I always keep all of the little things because I might be able to use them for something else. And then you just have to put the branches down. So normally the tree branches go up, and you want to have them go the opposite way. So you're just going to push them all down at the bottom and fluff them out as best as you can. And you're going to do this with both trees. So once you fluff out the second tree and have it the way you want it, you're going to join the two trees at the flat sides. What I mean by flat sides is you need one side on each tree to kind of be flatter so that you can join them and make a wider gnome, like so. And then you're going to use the top part of your branch just to tie them together. And once they are joined together, you're going to, again, kind of fluff it out a little bit to make it look a little bit fuller. And your body for your gnome is pretty much done. You will want to put it in your floral foam so that way you can put the hat on and fluff it out even more so you can kind of see what it looks like standing up. So what I did here was I just took 2 pieces of floral foam that I think will fit into the shoe. Should have measured it before I painted it, so make sure you do that. And I'm just going to put the base of the tree onto those pieces of floral foam and stretch it out as much as fluff out the tree as much as I need to make it like a fuller body of a gnome. Then you're going to take your dishcloth and you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to kind of cut out a moon shape. But first you're going to cut a little piece. So as you can see, I'm doing about 3 squares. And this will be for your mittens. So you're going to cut that piece out and put that off to the side. And then you're just going to shape your mittens. So what I'm doing is I'm making I'll be making four pieces of this. So right now I'm getting 2. Then I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to cut the piece right here, and then I'm going to cut out my mitten shapes once again, and then I'm going to hot glue these together. Now when you're hot gluing them, you want to make sure that you're hot gluing the inside of the mitten together. Now if your cloth is the same color on both sides, this doesn't really matter. It only matters if it's not the same on both sides. And you're just kind of shaping the mittens without the thumb. You don't need to worry about the thumb. So you want to make sure that that dries, cools off and dries, like sets for a bit before you try to flip it over. So that's why I'm leaving it right now. And while you're waiting for that, you want to cut your hat. And again, I'm flipping it on the inside out because that's how I'm going to be gluing it, and then I'm going to be turning it inside, like the right side in. So what I'm doing is just kind of cutting like a bit of a moon shape, I would say. You can do this however you want. So I'm just starting at the open corner and I'm going up to the closed corner and trying to keep as close as I can to the edge. My scissors need a good sharpening. I've been using them too much on things that I shouldn't be using them, so they're a little bit dull, but you get the idea. I've seen this done with a scarf too from the Dollar Tree, and so you could use that. It's really whatever fabric you have that you can use. I just happen to have this dishcloth, and I like the plaid right now, so I thought this would make a really cute hat for him. And so what you're going to do now is you're just going to glue the hat together. And don't worry about the edges not being super even, because you won't be able to see it once you glue everything together and flip it inside out. While wait for this to set and cool, you can flip over your other mitten, and you want to do this gently so you don't rip it open, but your hot glue should stick fairly well together. And then once you flip it over, it's a nice cute little mitten shape. So then while the other mitten dries, you want to flip the hat over, and then you can either attach a jingle bell to the end, or you can just kind of tie it to make it like a little ball at the end. And so I do decide that I want to use that fur and add it to the bottom of the hat. So I just measured out how much I needed around, and I'm going to hot glue it to the very bottom because I want the hat to be a little bit longer. So also be careful with that whenever you're picking your material. Make sure that it's as long as you want it, depending on how long you want his hat to be. So I'm just going to go and, like I said, bring the fur around, and then I'll cut it to where I think I need to have it. And then that's about it. You just hot glue it, and then there's your little cute little hat. And see what I meant about even if the edges weren't even when I cut them, because I flipped it inside out, they look even now. So make sure you do that if you want to have nice, beautiful, even edges. So once you have your hat made, then all that's missing is to put the hat on the tree and to give him a little nose. So what I am doing for the nose is I'm using a Christmas ornament, and when you're putting his hat on, you want to make sure that the bottom is lower than the top. The back of the hat is lower than the front of the hat, and so that way it hangs nice. So that's what I'm doing here, is just positioning it. And I'm just using a champagne colored ornament from the Dollar Tree. It came in one of those tubes for $1, and I'm only using one. And I'm putting lots and lots of hot glue on it so I can pop it in just under his hat. And you want to make sure that you find a little branch to glue it onto. And then you just hold it down so it sets a little bit for a few seconds. And his body is all ready to go. Now you just want to put him into your shoes or boots or whatever you did. And sorry, but before I go ahead and do that, I do wind up using that white paint. I thought maybe I would use the fur as his beard, but I decided that a little bit of white paint to make him have kind of a white beard is a better way to go. So I just added a little bit of white paint to my plate here, and I'm just adding it onto his where his beard is, so just under his nose. And once you have the perfect amount of white and it dries off a little bit, you can go ahead and glue his mittens to his to where his arms would be. And so what I just try to do is I try to find a spot where both sides are kind of have a branch sticking out, so it's somewhat even. His shoes, I'm just connecting together with just some floral wire. And I was going to hot glue them, but I thought that might give out if I'm moving him, so I thought this was a better way to do it. And I'm just finding a hole, and I'm going to tie it together nice and tight, and that should keep them from moving too much. And once this is nice and snug, then I go ahead and I put that floral foam into the shoes. I just wedge it in there, so I take it off of the from the tree and I just wedge it into the shoes, so that way I can put the Christmas tree on top without having to worry about dealing with the actual Christmas tree. And I made it a pretty tight fit, so make sure you do that as well, so this will prevent it from sliding out of the shoe. And so then all you do is just push the bottom of your tree into the floral foam. It doesn't matter if you get the same hole or not. And there he is, all finished. So I really love these little red pickup trucks from the Dollar Tree. I also really love the die cast ones that are big. However, they're quite expensive. So I thought, hey, why don't I make my own? So I got 2 of these little red trucks from the Dollar Tree, as well as this crate, the mini crates that they have at the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm going to be making a little red truck. So I will start off by removing these Christmas trees. So I was carefully removing the trees because I will be saving them for a different project. And they're great shape and they're perfect for Christmas. I will have to paint over them and I'll take off the garland that they have around, but they'll be perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and scrape off this Merry Christmas because I really don't want it on here. So I'm just using a scraper here to try and get off as much as I can, and I will sand a bit down too. And you don't have to do this if you like that Merry Christmas, but I wanted to get rid of it, and sometimes when you paint over the glitter it still shows, so I wanted to get rid of it. So now I will go ahead and I'm going to paint my little truck using this espresso paint, a little bit of white, there we go, some black acrylic paint, and some red acrylic paint, all of them from the Dollar Tree. And I'm gonna make kind of like more like a burgundy kind of red because I didn't want the truck to be this holiday red. It's a little bit too bright for me, so I'm just gonna mix some colors. So I'm mixing the red with a bit of the brown and a bit of the black. And first I'll start off with just painting it out red to get it to be that red color, and then I'll mix in some of the other colors. So I do wind up painting both sides of one of the pickup trucks because I will be putting it on the I have to flip it over, so I need the other side. And the reason I painted the inside was because I didn't want through the sides or anywhere the Merry Christmas peeking out, so I just kind of painted a little bit over top of that one. I won't show you the whole process, but I'll show you what it looks like finished, because I think you kind of can clue in on how to paint your little pickup truck. So like I said, I did sand though a little bit just to get that Merry Christmas off as much as I could. So the crate part, I'm going to paint black. I'm painting it on the inside and outside of the little bin because I want to make sure that when I switch it out for a different season, because I will be using this for the fall as well for decorating, if I decide to put pumpkins or something that's not so bulky like Christmas trees, it's not going to show the light color of the crate. So once that's nice and dry, as you can see, I did only the top parts of the crate, but inside fully. I'm going to hot glue it to one side of the pickup truck, and then I'm going to hot glue and well bond, I believe I used, for the other side. Now I did have to remove those little tire rims off of the one pickup truck because they, it wouldn't let me have like a nice flush glue. So, and I did save them so I could use them on the other side once I finished painting the other side of the one pickup truck. So once both sides were painted, I glued them and then I just clamped them. Even though I used the weld bond, it still needs a little bit of clamping for it to stick, otherwise it was falling over. So now I'm just going to measure out my popsicle sticks. Originally I was going to cut them to size so that they would be flush with the pickup trucks, but I was worried that I wouldn't cut them evenly, and quite frankly it would have taken me a really long time, and I don't like when the cuts aren't perfect, so I thought this would be better to just leave it whole. So that's what I'm planning out here. So once I've placed all of the popsicle sticks, it's time to paint them, and I'm going to be painting them that same combination of red, brown, and black as I did the pickup truck. This time I'm just mixing the colors together, whereas the first time I painted it red and then I just went over with a mixture. So after I paint the top of the pickup truck red, I decide that I need a little bit of height to the crate. So I'm adding some like little rails on the side, and I'm doing that with one garden pick. So you could also use a paint stick too, but these are garden picks from the Dollar Tree that I got this summer. Garden stakes, I should say. And I'm cutting it in half, and I'm using one on each side, and then I'm just using some popsicle sticks to make kind of like a to hold it basically up. But so I'm using 4 popsicle sticks and 1 garden pick. So here is what that looks like. And I've also gone ahead and painted it black. So I then went ahead and I put some floral foam in there, and just to give it a bit of height, and then I'm adding some Christmas trees to make it appear like the little red truck is carrying Christmas trees. So I also went ahead and I painted kind of the top part of the hood, just added a little bit of black detail, some lights, and I painted the windshield white, and there he is. You'll see in the next clip that I also added some of the Dollar Tree lights, which I put into the back and underneath the truck.
So for my trash to treasure today, I'm going to be using this plant tray. So I had bought a whole bunch of plants for my vegetable garden, and the little pots came in here, and I just didn't want to recycle it or throw it out because I thought it was a cute little tray, either for outdoors or indoors. It's not the strongest tray, so it's just decorative. But yeah, so it's nice. It's black. It is sturdier than a lot of them, but it's not like, you know, you could carry heavy things in it and use it like a serving tray.
So for the sake of time, I will not show you me spray painting this tray. I spray painted it white using a Rust-Oleum white chalk paint. I'll show you the can a little bit further down in the video. And what I did was I just did a light coat of it just so it covers fully, but with a little bit seeping through because I wanted the rustic look. There was spots where I missed, so I went over, but I didn't do 2 full coats, just kind of a light coat over top of everything. When you spray paint, you want to make sure that you're going lightly over top. You're not, you know, like spraying so hard in one spot because then you'll have pooling. So if there are spots that I missed, then I just went back, but very, very light coverage. So as you can see, there's a little bit of black showing there, which was totally fine because I wound up then going back and putting some black paint over top of this. Now the black that I'm using is just my Rust-Oleum chalked charcoal paint, and I'm going to dry brush over top of here, just kind of anywhere where I want to distress it. And when you're dry brushing, you want to wipe off the brush a little bit. Now before I go ahead and do that, I just want to show you which spray paint I used. So it was this guy, and it's that Ultra Cover paint primer. It was just basically the cheapest white spray paint that they had at Lowe's or at Home Depot or wherever I got it. It wasn't at Rona, so at either of those, because the Rona brand is cheaper. And I just use that to spray paint. So if you're looking for something that covers well, this is a good spray paint. I also really like the chalked spray paints as well, but they don't go as long as these ones do. So then I'm just going to dry brush the black on. And whenever I distress anything, I always do the edges a little bit more. Then I put a little bit less on different parts and kind of just mix it up. Now I keep my black paint in here because I had very little left, so it does dry out. So if you want to keep it for a little bit longer, put it in something that you can seal properly. And then just, like I said, put it on however you think the distressing will work. So I'm just showing you here where I kind of go darker, lighter, and even the pressure that I apply is different in different spots. And it's not like I plan it out going, okay, well, this spot I'm going to do lighter, this spot darker. I kind of start off, okay, I'll start off darker, so a bit more pressure, and then I do a little bit lighter, and then just kind of keep on going until it gets to the point where I like it. And it's just paint. So if you do too much, you can always put more white on, or if you do too little, you can always put more on. It's not like you've damaged it if you've put too much. You can always go back and fix it because it is paint and it can be painted over. So once it's dry and you have the right amount of paint that you want on there, the distressing, then you can go ahead and kind of dress it up a little bit. So when I looked at it, I thought it was a little bit too plain without any handles. But I also knew that if I hot glued any kind of handles, they might not stick for that long. That might not be permanent. And then I also didn't know what kind of handles I would want to hot glue on there. So what I did was I actually had this nautical rope that I remembered I bought for a different project. And at first I thought I would use the jute rope, but then I remembered about this nautical rope. I thought, well, this is perfect. So and I apologize for the shaking. I apparently hit my camera stand. So what I did was I just tied them on. I double knotted them on each side. I measured to make sure they were the same length. And again, this I eyeballed. I didn't really, oh, well, this has to be this length. I just kind of tied one on. Okay, I like the length. And then I did the next one the same length. And there you have it. There it is completed. It's really cute. Yay, you made it to #1, and here it is, the one that got the most views and the most compliments. I will be using another 3 grease splatter screens, as well as some floral wire, some white spray paint. And then you just need some sort of block. It could be a wood block, it could be anything, just for your base. This, I had a scrap piece of wood, but I mean, if you didn't have a scrap piece of wood, you could use you could even use a book and hot glue it to a book, like a heavier book, because you can get books at the Dollar Tree for $1.25, and they're hardcover books. It's really anything that you can attach these splatter screens to. I just happen to have scrap pieces of wood at home, so that's what I used. What I do then is I bend these splatter screens um, down so that I can attach them to my piece of wood. And I do it with the 2 ones that I'm using for the base. The third one I'm using for the top, so you don't need to bend that one. And then as I'm doing this, I realized this little piece of wood is too small, so I wound up using a bigger piece of wood. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that your piece of wood is big enough, long enough, and wide enough, or whatever you're using, so that way you can either hot glue it. I wound up screwing these in because screws work better than hot glue in terms of keeping it sticking longer. So I wound up getting my husband to help me screw them down, so that way I could make sure that they stay there for good. And then I wind up spray painting them white. Before I spray paint, I want to make sure I attach all the splatter screens together and then screw them in as well. So I'm just attaching them. This is where your floral wire comes in. I'm just attaching them with the floral wire. The base screens first and then the top screen. I'm measuring to see whether they'll fit on my block. And then I'm also measuring to see whether I like the way that looks as a snowman. So this is kind of to your liking. This was my measurements were. So if you want to make one exactly like mine, I did 6 inches apart. So just so that you're aware, but that's how I did mine. So, but you can do yours however you'd like. Once I attach my screens, I quickly realize it won't work with my small block. So I go ahead and I just grab another piece of wood that I had. I believe this is from some sort of shelving or something that we had, or I don't even know. It was just a scrap piece of wood that I found in my husband's workshop. So I'm going to hold it down while he screws it down. As you can see, it's as wide as the snowman, and it'll actually even look better in the long run. So if you used one of those books from the Dollar Tree, the bigger hardcover books, it would hold it down, and you could glue it down as well. So really, just because I used a block of wood and you don't have one, you don't have to go out and buy a block of wood. You can just use something like that, and obviously not screw it in, just hot glue it together. And if you don't have white spray paint or the gold spray paint like in the previous project, you can always just use acrylic paint. I just found it to be easier with spray painting. I didn't record the spray painting because that's pretty self-explanatory. I've done lots of spray paint tutorials as well, so if you want to see that, you can see it on a different video. Just for the sake of time, I didn't want this video to be too long. Once that's done, I just go ahead and I have this little sock from the Dollar Tree. It was a pair of socks that I got. One sock I'll use for another DIY, and then this one I'll just use, I'll cut it down so that it makes one long piece, and then I cut it in the middle to make 2 pieces so I can make a nice little scarf for my snowman. And then I use some black cardstock from the Dollar Tree for his buttons, and then a piece of felt that I had, but you can get these at the Dollar Tree as well, in orange for his nose, and the black cardstock I use for his eyes as well as his mouth. You could do buttons. I just didn't have enough buttons, and I believe the Dollar Tree has buttons for sewing and stuff, so you could always use those, but this is what I chose to use. I also used that cardstock to make a top hat for the snowman. So one sheet gave me all of this. One black sheet gave me enough. It was enough for the hat, the nose, the mouth. The hat, the mouth, and the buttons. So I wound up adding some boxwood to the scarf as well as some tissue paper to the base of the snowman, and I painted around the base in white just because for some reason the paint didn't stick. You could use acrylic, I used chalk paint, and I attached the hat as well as some of the leftover red ribbon to the hat and another little piece of greenery to complete my snowman. Here's the finished snowman. I think he is super cute. Yay, you made it to the end. You've watched my very first mega video. I did a mini mega video a few weeks ago. This was my first super long video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you felt inspired by one of these DIYs from my 20 best of 2020. Also, if you could let me know if you've tried any of these things, I would love to see what your thoughts were. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Check out the playlist. Check out the collaborators. And have an excellent day and Happy New Year.